next topic would be ground settlement, and that will be presented from our colleagues in Deltares. So, Suzanne, on to you.
Hello, my name is Suzanne van Ekelen. I'm from Deltares, and I'm speaking also on behalf of Tonette Beroya Eitner from Darmstadt University. We will look at ground settlement, a physical modeling of ground settlement, and what is the reason for this research. We can think of consolidation, oxidation, dissolution of salt minerals like carbonates in karst areas, underground collapse, clay shrinking, or erosion. We will have a case that's a piled embankment. In this picture, a basal reinforced piled embankment. So we have a field of piles, and on top of that, a reinforcement in the base of the embankment. And on top of the embankment, we have a road construction or a railway construction. Many research groups have done research on this topic. And the basic idea is that the soft subsoil underneath the embankment settles, for example, by consolidation. And the purpose of the most researchers is how large are the tensile forces and the strains that are the result of the consolidation underneath. So I will first tell you about different activation systems to activate the subsoil settlement. And then I will tell you something about measurements that are interesting in this type of research. Well, done very often is trapdoor tests, which is like this. Some horizontal plate moves down and a gap occurs. And a very a good example is of our Geolab partner university, Gustav Eiffel. There they have a lot of piles, and on top of that a mobile tray, which is lowered during an experiment. And within this mobile tray, they construct an embankment. A removal of the subsoil is also an option done in Malaysia. After the construction of the full embankment, somebody went underneath and just dug away the subsoil, which is quite dangerous and not specifically recommended. Compaction of the subsoil. Peat was used in Germany, University of Basal, by Sasken Heights, and several examples exist of foam or rubber model to model the compaction. This is in Germany, in South Korea, and the group of Daniel Diaz, Oriana Jeng. Here we have an American example where they used EPS and dissolved this using D-limonene, which is basically the juice of an orange skin. Another example of dissolving is using cardboard, dissolve this by water. This is being applied currently in experiments with Aciri Plus in France. In the current round of Geolab, the first round, we have already done small-scale experiments on piled embankments in the Deltares lab, and now a full experiment, nearly full-scale experiment, will be done in the TU Darmstadt, and there we will combine compaction of rubber, and underneath that we have a cardboard which will be dissolved by water. Then in China, several experiments exist where water bags were used. So first they were filled, closed, then the embankment is constructed, and then the water bags will be emptied, and then a cap occurs. And then in our lab, we have developed a foam cushion, which is soaked and wrapped so that it is leak-proof, and a tap is attached. And when we push the foam cushion, the foam starts to consolidate, just like this. And then on top of this, we have, this is the first Geolab experiment done last month. On top of this, we have a reinforcement, which can be a geosynthetic or a steel reinforcement, and then a second part of the box, which can be filled by a fill, sand, or broken stone, or broken construction material. And then an experiment looks like this. The surcharge load is increased during the experiment in steps, and then the tap is opened of the cushion underneath, and consolidation starts, which takes, for example, 2 or 3 hours. And then in the end of each experiment, we suck this foam cushion vacuum, if we want to, so that we lose each subsoil support. So now we have seen the following activation mechanisms to model ground settlement. We saw trapdoor tests done in many universities, the removal of the subsoil, compaction by using peat or rubber or foam, dissolution of EPS or cardboard, using water bags, and we saw that soaked foam cushion. Now I will tell you a little bit about measurements in this type of structures. Of course, we can measure this load distribution by using total pressure cells. We will go on with something less usually applied, and that is measuring the shape of the deformed reinforcement to determine the load distribution. Because if we have a purely parabolic shape, for example, like this, then we know that we have a uniform load distribution. If we have this shape, we have a triangular load distribution. And if we have this shape, we have an inverse triangular load distribution. We can just calculate from the measured shape how the load distribution is. And then so we should measure the shape of the deformed reinforcement. And this applies also for other types of structures like sheet pile walls. Here we scanned the surface before and after the test. Here we use different points where with a small water pressure meters in a tube filled with liquid attached to a bottle with water in it. This is called a liquid leveling system. Here we use in experiments separate points. It's also possible to install in the field or in a large experiment a tube and then pull a liquid leveling system sensor through these tubes, as you can see here in the field test. Then we have worked for the first Geolab round with a partner, NERV, SHM Systems from Poland, who applied 3D sensor which can measure X, Y, Z displacement in a ground body. And this, in our experiments, it looks like that. It was a specially tailored system for this experiment, but they also have standard products. You see, it's quite flexible, and it could be installed quickly. And we installed this at several levels in the soil body. Now, if we have measured the shape of the reinforcement, then we can calculate the load distribution from this. So sometimes it's possible to measure the deformation to determine the load distribution. Some other optic fiber applications, which is very interesting, is here we have, they have NERV systems attached these optic fibers to steel bars. And here we have strain measurements, also with optic fibers, in several layers in the soil body. So we saw we can apply total pressure cells. We saw we can measure the deformed shape to determine load distribution. And we saw that there are several applications of optic fiber techniques. So this brings me to the end of this part of the presentation.
Thank you very much,